What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So, the troubles are continuing to mount for Irish MMA superstar Conor McGregor. He has now officially lost his first brand deal, his first sponsor, right? Because when your name becomes synonymous with something like a sexual assault, companies tend to not really like doing business with you anymore. Okay, we've seen this happen multiple times in the past. It is now apparently happening to Conor McGregor, and I'm not a fan of this, to be honest. I've been very upfront in my videos about the fact that I don't really think he's guilty of these things. And listen, it's not because I'm some sort of UFC shill or Conor McGregor shill. Not at all. Not at all. You know, what kind of person Conor McGregor is absolutely irrelevant to me. It is merely simply from being a practical thinker and an objective thinker looking at all of the facts of the case. I tend to lean towards it just doesn't add up to me. You know, she claims that she was assaulted by Conor McGregor, but yet we know for a fact that she was seen on security footage making out with, hugging, kissing on the neck of his friend James Lawrence only mere hours after supposedly being violently sexually assaulted by Conor. Okay? That is not the behavior of a woman who was violently sexually assaulted. Okay? And James Lawrence, although was not initially included in the complaint, once she came back and was shown the CCTV footage of her with James Lawrence, she tried to kind of flip her story and flip her narrative and say, oh, I didn't even realize that happened. He must have raped me too. So then she added him into the charge. Initially, she just said it was Conor. She doesn't even mention James Lawrence. It's just Conor, right? She goes back to file the civil complaint because, of course, the Department of Prosecutions in Dublin first looked at the case. They were like, we can't proceed with the criminal case. We just don't see enough evidence. Sure, there was a lot of reasons for that. They're on a 2-3 day bender. They're out drinking. They're doing cocaine. They're going from one party to another and then to a penthouse. And this, so they didn't initially think that it was a valid complaint, so they didn't proceed with a criminal case. At that point, she came back and filed a civil case or a civil charge. All right. And when she came back to do that, that's when they were like, hey, look at this footage, by the way, because they had already talked to James Lawrence. They had already talked to Conor McGregor. What happened that night? What's your account of things? Tell us what happened. Start from A, go to B, C, C. Let us know what the night of events looked like from your perspective. Okay. And so they had already done that. Well, when she came back to file the civil suit, they laid one on her. They were like, okay, so we have footage here of you making out with this other guy that was with Conor and with you that same night. And this supposedly, according to the story you're telling us, happened a couple of hours after this supposed violent assault by Conor McGregor. What are you doing in this elevator with this guy? Kissing him on the neck. What are you doing in this taxi cab making out with this guy? Okay, so my my synopsis on that has nothing to do with being a grape apologist. Yeah, I got called that when I first did a video on this. Has nothing to do with my being a grape apologist. Has nothing to do with anything other than I just looked at the facts of the case as we know them, as we heard them, as she gave them to the authorities, and it just does not make sense to me. Sorry, just doesn't make sense. None of the actions from Nikita Han that night. Okay, there are so many of her actions that took place that night that are not consistent with a woman who was against her will violently assaulted. Okay? Let's just put it that way. Let's just put it that way. And that's why I believe what I believe. With that said, Conor McGregor is losing brand deals. He's losing sponsorships over this. All right. Now, is that right or wrong? I don't know. Maybe it's a lesson for him because I talked about this in my last video. Whether he actually assaulted the lady or not, let's get real. You have a fiance at home, you have several children with this fiance. Okay. Maybe you shouldn't be out drinking and doing cocaine and having sex with other women. Listen, it's really easy for me to say. I get it. He's Conor McGregor. He's this big, huge, massive star that millions of women would give their left arms to just have a night with him like that. He's worth millions and millions of dollars. Okay, I get he's a tough guy. Yeah, I get all of that. Okay, so it's easy for just a regular guy like me to be like, come on, man, stay at home with your wife, stay at home with your kids. It's easy for me to say that. Probably a little harder for him to say that, being a mid 30s guy who's pumped full of testosterone, other drugs, and probably even steroids. Probably easier for me to say, but still, nonetheless, I don't care how big of a star you are, you know, you could do the right thing and be faithful to your fiance. You could do the right thing and be faithful to your children at home and where they have a dad who actually honors their mom. You could do that. I'm just saying, it's not impossible. Okay? Sure, it's hard being a huge, big megastar like Conor McGregor. I'm sure it's hard. Just ask all of the other people out there. Just ask Tiger Woods. Just ask Michael Jordan. Just ask all of these other people who live life on the road. You have to a certain degree, be in the public eye. I get that. So it's easier for me to say I don't necessarily have media obligations that I have to be at. So some of this is just a byproduct of him being an entertainer. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's a lot easier to just say, well, just stay at home, bro. Well, I mean, you can't stay at home all the time. He's an entertainer and he has his hands in different businesses. So there are times where he has to go places and do things. Okay. But with that said, you don't have to do them with young women. You don't have to include alcohol and cocaine. You don't have to include penthouses where you take these women. Portions of this you don't have to do in the way that you are doing them. Okay. Let's just get real. So, I'm going to read an article to you, and it starts like this. Troubles mount on Conor McGregor as UFC star loses his first sponsor after ongoing controversy creates a stir. I wouldn't call this an ongoing controversy as much as he was accused of sexual assault. Not just accused of it, but at this point, in a civil case, has been convicted of it. I mean, he's been held liable for an assault on this woman. Okay. And I do want to clear something up. Apparently, this is not a liability for grape. Okay. This is a liability for an assault. Okay. What really is the difference? What really is the difference? Okay. Man, we could get so far down into the weeds on this shit. You know, I mean, it's an unpopular opinion probably by me, but I think this lady is a social piranha who is just trying to get some money. Well, great, she got it, but now look what's happening now. This isn't only just going to affect Conor in the short term. This isn't something that is going to mull over after a night, a few days, a week, 2 weeks. This is something that will always kind of linger over the top of him and linger over the top of his head. So if it's not completely true, and even if they were in a situation where they were both really drunk, both really inebriated, or both really high on cocaine, and they just had some rough consensual sex, and then afterwards she felt bad about it or something. But then she accuses him of a violent grape, then that's pretty messed up on her part, if I'm being honest with you, because this absolutely is a stigma that is going to hang over the top of Conor McGregor's head for as long as he walks this earth, okay? Conor McGregor is facing the first signs of backlash after he lost a civil trial a few days ago. The UFC superstar was found guilty by a jury of sexually assaulting Nikita Hand and ordered to pay about $260,000 in damages. While this is not a criminal trial, and the Irishman is thus not facing any prison time, it has dealt a serious blow to his brand. Okay, we know all this. The clearest sign of this came after the video game company IO Interactive decided to remove Conor McGregor from their smash hit game Hitman: World of Assassination. The company announced this on social media. And this is the quote from IO Interactive. In light of the recent court ruling regarding Conor McGregor, IO Interactive has made the decision to cease its collaboration with the athlete effective immediately. We take this matter very seriously and cannot ignore its implications. Consequently, we will begin removing all content featuring Mr. McGregor from our storefronts starting today. A tweet from the official Hitman account read, The Irishman The Irishman was part of a downloadable content package for the game, where the player playing the assassin Agent 47 was entrusted to kill the video game version of McGregor. Now, however, the DLC will no longer be available for new players. Whether this will affect the players who have already bought the DLC remains unknown, but it does seem unlikely. Okay, so his part in this game was that it's almost like his character in the game is like some mob boss or something that when you get to that level of the game, you get to kill him. I mean, seems like they leave that in there as far as I'm concerned. Um, if people are mad at him for, if the company's mad at him and if people are mad at him because they think that he did this, I mean, let the gamers kill him. It seemed kind of weird. After all, the company would almost definitely be criticized if it chose to yank the DLC from players who have already paid for it. IO Interactive may choose to do so eventually and refund the players for it, but at the moment, it seems those who have this DLC could continue playing it. But McGregor is as defiant as ever and already taking steps to have the court decision overturned. And that's the court decision of, him being responsible for this assault. Conor McGregor predictably is not happy with the civil case. The Irishman has announced that he would be appealing the verdict since he feels the jury did not do their jobs properly in deciding the case. Of course, this process will take some time, and the Dubliner will have to bear the albatross across his neck until his appeal is adjudicated, and may see more companies cut ties with him in the coming days, if that is, the verdict is overturned by a higher court, which very well remains to be seen. Of course, many are wondering what effect this will have on Conor McGregor's return to the UFC, and the answer is that probably no effect at all. After all, the UFC is not one to really penalize or treat its fighters differently because of their legal troubles. John Jones and his history of being on the wrong side of the law is a perfect example of this. Yeah, that's true. Well, and to take that a step further, especially when they're a huge money making star for the UFC. Okay. If you're some no name that, you know, has had 3 or 4 fights, never held a belt, fought a couple of times on the prelims and didn't do that well, and, you're not a very popular fighter as well, then I think the UFC would probably have more to say about certain situations. But when you are a huge money maker for them, and Conor McGregor obviously is the biggest moneymaker ever in MMA, period. Not just in the UFC, in all of MMA. All right. Um, the bombastic Dubliner, the bombastic Dubliner is looking to make his UFC comeback after 3 years of inactivity sometime next year. But his losing the civil trial is unlikely to make Dana White and company any more less hesitant to offer him a fight and promote him to the best of their abilities. What do you think about IO Interactive cutting ties with Conor McGregor? Oh, you're asking me? Asking me? Well, I mean, I think it's silly because, again, I don't necessarily believe that what happened between Conor McGregor and Nikita Han would be considered certainly not great, but even assault. Um, his account of it was that it was rough sex. Okay. Um, and there have been plenty of people to have rough sex, and there were no complaints ever made. And you also have to consider there was a lot of alcohol involved here, there was cocaine involved, there were a lot of things involved that makes it to where it's kind of difficult to believe her account of the story. Then also considering that she was consensually, apparently, sexually active with his friend James Lawrence later that same night. This is not typical behavior of a woman who has been violently assaulted or violently raped recently. It's just not. Um, and so when you look at stuff like that, to me, looking at IO Interactive cutting ties with Conor McGregor, I mean, I think they did what they had to do. I think they did what they felt like they had to do and what they felt like was the right thing for their company and for their business. It's worldwide news, obviously, that Conor was held liable for this assault, and then for them to turn around and continue keeping him in the game or keeping him as a very noticeable, famous face within the confines of that game probably wouldn't look good on them. And they are trying to protect their business. And to me, as far as I'm concerned, that's collateral damage when you're dealing with something like this. And if it is a fact that Connor really didn't do what he was accused of doing, and this lady was just trying to get a few bones out of him, which obviously she did, if that is the case, then, you know, I feel bad for him. But at the same time, it's the price you pay when you're a huge star like this. And I mentioned this in my last video. Let this be a lesson to Conor McGregor. Keep it at the house, bro. Keep it at the house. And if you do have to go anywhere, bring your lady with you. If it's a place where you can bring your children, do that. Don't be out in these places and putting yourself in these situations where these women that you don't even know that well and know what their intentions are are able to be alone with you and then possibly concoct some sort of story that you did XYZ to them. Just don't be alone with them, bro. And now that this narrative has been sent out there into the ethosphere, into the universe, it's going to make it even worse because now there's that little question mark floating around in people's minds. Did he do it? I mean, and listen, seeing the things that he has done, being his violent tendencies, slapping a man in a pub, grabbing a fan's phone out of their hand and throwing it on the ground and smashing it or whatever he did, throwing a dolly through a bus window. I mean, when you also are a person who is guilty of doing things like this that obviously show that you have a very short fuse, a very bad temper, it's not a far cry away from, I can see how, you're not far away from being that guy that people could just assume that, oh yeah, he'd rape a girl. Yeah, he'd absolutely assault a girl. I mean, we've seen him assault other people against their will for no reason. Oh, and there was that one too. Some DJ. I don't know whatever happened with this, but there was some DJ in Italy a couple of years back who claimed that Conor McGregor just literally hauled off and just gave him a straight left punch right to the nose for no apparent reason. I mean, literally, the guy's claim was that he's just standing there having an amicable give and take sort of conversation with Conor McGregor. All of a sudden, Conor's eyes glaze over and he literally just straight left right in the nose to the guy, and you hear stuff and you hear stuff like that, but then it goes away pretty quickly because Conor McGregor has so much money and so much power, and really at the end of the day, what a lot of these people are wanting is just some monetary compensation to shut up and stop talking about it. And it may, if in that case, if it actually did happen, you know, this guy's a UFC fighter. He's a cage fighter. I'm sure the DJ who got punched in the mouth. I mean, I'm sure his frame of thinking is, you know, I mean, I'd rather have I'd rather have a couple of hundred G's or a half mil than him do time in the jail. I don't really care. I would, he's probably after the money. A lot of these people are probably after the money. I'm not saying their initial, complaint, because obviously Connor has done some of these things out of anger and he has those violent tendencies. So I'm not saying these people are wrong for pursuing some sort of damages against him, but it is convenient how each time something like this happens, Connor never does any jail time, right? Never goes to jail, never gets locked up, and it always just kind of slowly but surely just fades into darkness and fades into an oblivion. And then at that point, it's just a whisper of, oh, yeah, you remember way back in the day when he did so and so and so and so? Yeah, you remember when he took that dolly and he threw it to the bus window? Yeah, you remember when he slapped that guy in the pub? Whatever happened to those people? Connor didn't ever do any jail time for it, right? I'll tell you what happened. Those people got paid and they were happy with that. They were okay with that. Wow, I took a little slap in the pub. I was in the right place at the right time, and now I'm $250,000 richer. Hell yeah. You know what I mean? And I think it get to the point could get to the point for a lot of people where they would try to put themselves in a situation by themselves with Conor McGregor, hoping that he would do something silly, hoping that he would do something violent towards them so they could then turn around and maybe get paid themselves. I mean, there are people out there that think this way. Either way, I'm going to stop. I've been talking about this shit long enough. What do you guys think about this? As far as I know, this is the first example of him having lost any sponsor, and any of his brand deals being affected by this. What do you guys think? IO Interactive, are they right in doing this? Did they do the right thing? You know, or is this very presumptuous? Should they have done their own sort of investigative work and looked at the facts of this case and looked at the fact that it never was a criminal case or a criminal trial because the prosecution's office of Dublin didn't see enough evidence to make it that? Did they look at the fact that she was consensually sexually active with this friend of Conor McGregor's several hours later after claiming that Conor himself assaulted her? Should they have done their own investigative research, or do they just take what the court said as fact and what the jury decided as fact and drop the brand deal? I mean, let's get real, guys. Conor McGregor's worth, you know, probably close to $1 billion at this point. Losing this brand deal with IO Interactive is not gonna, you know, I mean, he could never make another penny as long as he lives, and he would still die a very wealthy man. Okay? I mean, come on, let's get real. What do you guys think? If you have not, please do subscribe to the channel. If you're watching my content and you're not subscribing to the channel, you're stealing my shit. You're stealing my shit. Pay up if you would, just by subscribing. That's all I ask. Okay? It does help. When I get more subscribers, it helps the algorithm to push my content, and that's what I really need for the channel to grow. So if you would do that, I would appreciate it. And comment, let me know what you think, like the video, all that good stuff. All right, I gotta go. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.